Welcome to Space
Erased,
the NASA Fraudcast. Today we're bringing to you episode number 3, the first part of a multi-part series on the moon hoax and the NASA Mason connection therein. How you doing today, Matt?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm pretty excited about this one, buddy. I'm not gonna lie.
I am too. I mean, this has been a long time coming. We've been doing a lot of research on this, so we're gonna touch a lot of different subjects here. Do you know where you'd like to start us out, Chris?
Well, I kind of want to take a look at the history here a little bit first, but really, I mean, the source of my excitement is this is really like the holy grail of all hoaxes, you know, the moon landing hoax.
It's a big one.
I think it's like Kennedy assassination, moon hoax, somewhere in that, yeah.
Well, and 9/11, and there's
9/11, yeah, it's a newer one, but you know, historically, this is...
so of the classic hoaxes, there you go. So
this is like
we'll call this hashtag host class.
You're the car, man. This is got to be like a Thunderbird from the 50s or something like that, kind of equivalent.
Yeah, the Bel Air.
The Bel Air, there we go.
There you go.
Good.
Iconic, classy, and world-renowned. So we're going to do the history for the first one here. I think that's a good idea. So we'll break this into that multi-part series. First thing we'll do is history, and let's start it out with... What you got, Chris?
Well, so we're going to start out with the date 1962. Let's take it back to 1962.
Wasn't that the year that JFK decided to send the country to the moon?
That's correct. Oh, actually, yeah, that's the year he did his speech. You know, like the we decide to put man on the moon,
not because it was easy,
but because it was hard, you know. So.
I love the. I if you watch the whole speech, it makes sense, but everybody just chops that one sentence out. But you get that. We're gonna go to the moon. And we're gonna do the other stuff too. Now, not because it's easy, because everybody does that like, yeah, and the other stuff too. We'll get to that. Don't worry about it.
You know, all that hard stuff. So that's some scientist's deal. He's got to figure all that shit out. I'm just gonna make impossibly difficult missions for the American people, and good luck, everybody. By the way, that happens after my administration's over, so no way in hell would I be responsible for them screwing this up.
But 7 short years later, basically we achieved the mission, quote unquote, or did we? And this is where Chris and I differ. See, I think, you know, I've done a lot of research now on the moon hoax, and my perception has changed. I now don't believe that exactly how it was given to us was exactly how it went, but I don't think that the entire program was a hoax. There's so much footage and there's so many things.
Let's start it off. I mean, I asked you in our pilot where you're at with the moon hoax, but tell everybody one more time here what you believe, and I'll tell everybody what I believe real quick.
Okay, the short version, I believe that we were in a race and the United States could not lose. The Russians were way ahead and we had to have a big win in order to make that make sense for our country here.
The Cold War, yeah.
It was a rallying point, and it was a summation of the Cold War pretty much. So I believe that we could have hoaxed it, and we at this point I do believe that the first landing, so Neil Armstrong, that was a hoax for sure. And I've seen a lot of other moon footage, and we're going to show some on the show here tonight as well, where it's just, it looks like a set, and there's like the same exact mountain in the back of every picture, and they're supposed to be like miles apart from each other. So there's a lot of stuff that I just can't justify, but I'm not ready to throw in the towel. But Chris is here to try and convince me on this path to believing that the entire NASA program was a complete hoax.
Yeah. Well, I would go a little bit further, but I actually agree with you on the first part there, where, it was really tight tensions historically at that time with Russia having the capability of nukes and all this stuff, or like possibly weaponizing space. So the American people were like terrified that the Russians would figure out that technology before we did. That
was a terrifying deal.
Yeah.
Because, weapons in space, it still sounds terrifying, even in 2016 here.
2016, and then, they wrote a pamphlet, God, I don't know when it came out, probably the 80s or before that. It was called the Plans for the Future 2020 or something like that, or Space in the Future 2020. But it shows, like, satellites with laser beams hitting Earth and stuff, and it's basically like, in the document, it's a NASA or military document, they said that there's going to be growing tensions between the lower class people and the higher class people, because that disparity is going to get larger and larger as corporate America keeps growing bigger and bigger. Actually, this was from the Pentagon. That's where it came from.
Well, and it was more about globalization. So globalization is a good thing and can be a good thing if used correctly, but
it's never going to get used.
Well,
it's always going to be abused.
Trade is a huge deal. If you're trading with another country, the chance that they're going to attack you over something is pretty small. I mean, that economic benefit is somewhat, that outweighs whatever political benefit you get from it. So trade's a powerful deal. So global economics, that can be a great thing, but does that mean global government? And that's where a lot of people start to separate on that issue. So I guess moving on to the next area.
Well, the deal with that document, though, to go back to the Pentagon document, they said, with this growing disparity between the upper class and lower class, the lower class people are going to start unionizing together to, abolish the higher class that's screwing them over.
Basically, take on the corporations.
They said it's impossible to put a Marine on every street corner. So what we could do is get stuff up in space that could monitor, record audio and see and hear everything from space, basically. To make you, no matter where you are, they can still find you, still hear you, still, keep tabs on you, or maybe even shoot something at you. So the mission at the get-go that brought all of this NASA stuff to fruition was to weaponize space.
Yeah, Star Wars.
Yeah, and then obviously we talked about it, we hinted at it in a different episode, but this Bill Cooper theory isn't just his. A lot of people subscribe to this as well, but apparently, oh shit, I'm dropping my idea here.
William Cooper.
Will Cooper said, to pull off this hoax on people where we're going to bring aliens up in the sky and scare everybody into a one world government, we first have to convince people that like space travel's a possible feasible thing. We have to educate people about space, give them a big story about all the planets and shit around us, and NASA was born, basically. So they used this program or this organization to show you all these pictures of, which are basically paintings, and now they're made out of CGI of like satellites in outer space and all this stuff. Well, none of that's real footage of what's going on.
That's true.
But
you don't
tells
see many...
you a story, basically, and it's propaganda is what it is.
Mm-hmm. And you don't really see many pictures of real satellites, just like what Chris is saying. It's all they're all like, oh, here's a digital renderization of what this satellite might look like.
Yeah, my question in all those pictures is who's taking the picture? Is there another satellite just following this multi-bajillion-dollar satellite we put up in orbit? Just to take pictures of it, though, of course. No, it's all CGI bullshit.
I understand this podcast is going to be mainly surrounding NASA, but I'd like to take that a step further and use the first word, space, to kind of get more into that alien topic. So on a future episode, I'd love to explore that topic because it's a great argument. Bill Cooper does do a lot of work on that, so if anybody's familiar with his work, they'll already know Behold a Pale Horse, which was a huge cult classic.
It's like the number one conspiracy related material. It's a bestseller kind of book type of deal for the conspiracy subject matter.
A lot of our viewers might know, because you already have to know a lot in order to dig this deep to get to a show like what you're watching
before you hit us, before you find us here,
because there's a lot more credible, better, higher polished, better paid type programs out there. But when you're at a level like this, we look at a lot of different stuff, and conspiracy and all that kind of stuff is just kind of scratching the surface there. So
let's take a look at the history here, bud. Let's dive
absolutely.
into it. So without further ado, so we're going to go back to Project Paperclip. We hinted at that in the last episode there a little bit, but again, all the stuff is connected, so you're going to run into the same themes and topics and bits of history here as we go. Just for those who don't know, Project Paperclip was a deal where the United States government post World War II, they were holding the Nuremberg trials and trying all these SS troops, Nazis and stuff, for all the war crimes they did. But secretly, the United States government plucked all, a good couple, probably a couple hundred guys
Yeah, well, the
couple hundred
German,
Nazis that were like the tip top of what they did.
Germany's
Scientists,
finest. Yeah.
doctors that were doing some pretty gnarly, cruel stuff to people. But they're like, oh, well, we're not going to throw out this research that they did. Obviously, I mean, they
the
chopped up a bunch
research-
of people, but they
yeah.
did find out some good stuff here.
The research existed, so it's either like you just accept the fact that this is what happened and just use the research, or say like, oh well, we don't believe in what they did, so we can't use any of that.
Nah, so anyways, they ended up recruiting von Braun, like we said in our last episode there with the ISS Part 2. They recruited von Braun, who was doing like a weekend rocketry kind of club type of deal. And they recruited him to eventually build the V1 and V2 rockets, which ended up bombing the crud out of London, Paris, and Brussels.
Became a huge weapon for the Germans. So and then and that's not where his career ended either.
No. So in addition to that, just a few more notes on that whole rocket building deal there. The first they put they got an island. We'll have to find that island name later. It'll probably be up when when you finally watch the program. I will have found that information out. But anyways, they did it from this big island. They used slave labor of French people that were protesters and stuff like that, and Jews at the time were not highly thought of, so they used those types of folks to be their slave labor. And then the Brits bombed that operation. They were like, we can't let these guys keep building missiles here, so they just blew it up. It was totally wide open from the sky. It's an island, so they just blew it up. So what they did, they got smart. The Nazis went to a mountain facility, and they built this huge underground tunnel thing in the mountains called Middlework. Kind of cool. Outside Middlework, they built a big concentration camp, and then their labor came from that concentration camp. They just
called the concentration camp was called Dora, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you know a little bit more about that history than I do. He's better with World War II, just in general there.
Big history buff.
Yeah. So the Nuremberg trials happened, brought the Nazis to justice. Paperclip smuggled these Nazis into the U.S., and they smuggled them into Huntsville, Alabama, into a new rocket facility that they were building. They took 1,500 of the top Nazi scientists, doctors, and the like. And those guys all split off into different deals. You might have heard of MK Ultra, which is a mind control program that's been in existence since basically post-World War II. Another group of guys went off, started NASA, and another group of guys did like the men that stare at goats kind of stuff and the LSD experiments and all that kind of stuff. So some pretty crazy, what would you call that, like fringe para-science kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely not mainstream scientific research.
Nah.
So,
but a lot of the really important stuff that, I'm sure the military is quite concerned about and fascinated with. They definitely throw a lot of money at it, for sure, by the looks of it. As we said, space weaponization was the biggest priority at the time. Enter now the Apollo program and Mercury and all that good stuff. So that'll pretty much take you up to the Apollo program. And there's a lot that happened during the Apollo program, but we're going to look now at the evidence that we can see, I guess. So that'd be the evidence they give us. We can only really judge the program based off of what NASA gives us, which is another kind of heads up that this might be, some big hoax, because they can control all that information coming to us.
And they restricted a lot of the information, or lost it, or erased it, or however you'd like to say it. So we only have a very small few clips. But even in the few clips there, you can just see that the hijinks was up. Like they ran out of ideas, and they only could get so far with the hoax.
Well, again, the name of our program was inspired by what happened here, years later, but they went down into the big NASA archives or whatever, where all the footage, there was like 70 boxes of reels of footage and reels of film and all this other stuff that just went missing, disappeared one day. And it's like, come on, man.
That's the most important footage of human history, and it just goes missing?
Yep.
Like, unbelievable.
You're telling me, we've got the most powerful we spend more money on our military than any other country on Earth, and we can't protect a couple of boxes of stuff? You kidding me? And that's the most important film that's probably...
And there wasn't a copy or anything? Well,
that's ridiculous.
There had to have been a copy.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
Somebody stole it. It has to obviously exist somewhere.
But anyways, essentially space was erased on that day.
Yeah,
so that's where
we can't see it anymore.
Cutesy little name comes from here. But okay, so some of the stuff that they pointed out... Actually, you know what? I'm going to save This is all like what's wrong with the footage. I think we're gonna move actually past this real quick to some of the Bill Cooper stuff because I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, so he was saying he worked earlier in the Office of Naval Intelligence. For those of you that don't know Bill Cooper, he's pretty good to listen to. Matt and I have slipped in and out of being fans of his and then not liking him so much, but it's because, he himself changed his opinion over time as he got older, and older Bill Cooper is the guy that I believe. So at the end of his life, when I think he got everything figured out, that's the dude I agree with. When I heard Chris wanted to do an episode and include anything by Bill Cooper, I was honestly surprised and thought it might affect our credibility, but Cooper did just nail a lot of things, and he really took on the right enemies. And I don't want to go too much into that, but if you follow his story, he was shot right outside of his home and under a very mysterious circumstance. So if somebody was dealt with in that way, something they were saying must have been true enough. Well, rewind the clock a little bit. He predicted the 9/11 thing. And he said,
"That's right.
Look at CNN. Look at all these news agencies. Watch what they're saying about Osama bin Laden. Whatever they're about to pin on this guy, don't you believe it for a second. If you do," he goes, "you're the sorriest bunch of jerks I ever met in my whole life." I like the way the guy talks. He's funny. He's a Texan. He's kind of a no-nonsense guy. But anyways, so let's get back into it here. So he worked for the Office of Naval Intelligence. And during that time, he was able to get his hands on some documents outlining the coming of a new world order or a globalized...
One world government.
One world government, yep. And one with the connection to an ancient religion of Babylon. So that's kind of something I also want to get into here. It's like, I'm not personally a Bible guy. I don't really have a religion. I'm not like an atheist. I just don't subscribe to anything. And I'm sure there's a name for that too, and that drives me fucking nuts.
An agnostic.
But, yeah, whatever. I don't know.
Well, an agnostic means that you're actually thinking about which way you lean, but you can't decide.
I don't think about it at all. I don't think it has any bearing on my life, and I certainly don't think it's science, because nobody can go back to the beginning of time and record it and repeat it and all that good stuff. So it's just not... It's not science. I don't know. That's my personal opinion. But you have to know that the people that are in control of our world, the people that are in these secret societies, definitely subscribe to some dark satanic shit. And it's starting to become more and more apparent to at least myself the more research I do into all this stuff. We're talking celebrities, politicians, pretty much any billionaires, people of big influence in this world. There's a small sect of these people that are kind of on the fringe that are dealing with some dark satanic crap. So it's something to keep an eye out for. And these people like symbolism and all that kind of stuff, so they bury it through all of what they do. So anyways, that's the ancient religion of Babylon, I guess, is where a lot of that stems from. These documents that he was looking into at the Office of Naval Intelligence called for the creation of an external, what we'll call external artificial threat. And that threat is going to be most likely a faked alien invasion. And like, what better idea could you possibly have to scare the whole globe? You can see the Earth in my sunglasses here. What better way to scare the whole globe into banding together and to supporting the idea of a one world government? Like everybody, handing over their civil liberties and rights to join this big... sounds like an awful idea. I'm just not a proponent at all. I think in theory it sounds great. I wish we could all put our problems aside and band together as a world and do away with war and all this unnecessary stuff. But realistically, no.
It wouldn't happen.
The powerful guys are going to abuse the shit out of that, just like they abuse the crap out of capitalism and everything else. Capitalism sounds like a great idea on paper as well. But anyways, keeping things moving here. So... we have to scare people into this alien idea, but people at that time have no idea about aliens. So let's start making a bunch of movies at the time, like The Day the Earth Stood Still and all this stuff coming out right after World War II.
Well, and the day
start implanting that idea.
Yeah, The Day the Earth Stood Still is when all of America got this fantastic line of, I'll believe in aliens when they land on the White House lawn and all that stuff.
Yeah, get ready for that shit, because $20 says that's how they're going to do it. Either that or...
Well, I actually think it would totally be opposite. I mean, what a random place to land, but
I guess
at the same time, I don't know. I just it's such an iconic movie that people still use that line today, and that movie's been around for years and years and years. It was in black and white originally, I think.
But okay, so to move on with this thing there, NASA was created basically to convince people, or to start educating people about the reality in the the real space and the science behind it and all this stuff, which turns out it's most likely a bunch of bullshit. But yeah, it's got to be believable. And backable financially. We got to get the people to support this. And I'm sure that's where Kennedy's rebel-rousing speech kind of comes from, to get people. Now we got the American population supporting this kind of thing, So we had to create the Apollo program to make it believable that man could travel and walk upon the moon. Travel to and walk upon. And each Apollo mission was carefully staged and practiced. And the actual execution of them were staged in a secret Nevada facility out in the Nevada desert, the Atomic Energy Commission's top secret test site located in the Nevada desert. And then the rest of it was in a large soundstage with a massive mock-up of the moon and a securely guarded soundstage in the Walt Disney Studios.
Yeah, and who made it? Disney. Yeah, that's I just heard that, and that's another thing that's really hard for me to believe that such a huge company would do something like that. But at the same time, in order to do something like that, you'd need a large company like Disney
that has like their own massive facility where they could tuck something like this quietly away.
Well, they according to the video I watched, and I saw a couple different things, but specifically on that particular topic, they were saying they built a facility out in the desert somewhere. So it's like
that's
like a
the Atomic Energy Commission's top secret test site.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Which just sounds cool.
Yeah. I want to meet the guy that comes up with the names for that stuff.
So yeah, between those two facilities, they faked either the large-scale land deals or shots, and then they faked the small-scale stuff in the studios and all that. There's even evidence that they use like miniatures and stuff like that as well, like little action figure-sized guys to create certain bits of the scenes there.
Yeah, there's actually a video I'll put up here too, where you can see you're looking at the lunar lander, and out of nowhere, some dude pops out of the corner. It's like just a guy. It's not
it's a stagehand or something.
It's not like an astronaut with a suit on or anything, but it's just like a guy that pops into frame and and then walks back.
He leans down and he picks something up.
Yeah, picks something up, and then.
But you can see somebody from the corner of the frame like pull him away. So there's two men on the side of that. It's the Spectre footage. That's actually kind of interesting. We'll probably have to touch into that more later on the episode, where we're just looking at footage and tearing all that crap apart. But in the Spectre film, what happened was a gentleman came out named Svector, Spectre, and he shows this footage of a stagehand picking up some debris at the NASA, or at the moon landing test site, or at the moon landing site, excuse me. And then a couple months later, he comes back out and says, no, this was all a huge hoax, and everybody's like, oh, they got to him and all that stuff. And then they dismissed it as a hoax because the guy who created it said it was a hoax. And then a few months later, people started doing more research into it, and they found out that his footage, like exactly frame for frame, matched the NASA footage, except it was taken from a different vantage point, a second camera angle on the moon, which they only had one camera in that situation.
That's pretty interesting. I haven't heard that.
So that's what made that kind of more believable, and that kind of like the plot thickened there a little bit. So that's kind of interesting. That shows that there is a possibility of multiple cameras being on the moon, which would mean multiple operators.
Well, and like the camera that looked up at the lander as it took off and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that must be a pretty lonely guy that got left on the moon there.
Yeah, exactly.
The camera
well, and their story from NASA is that they had like a radio-controlled deal that, like a gimbal that turned up automatically or whatever, but I think that's BS. And they even said, oh, well, we missed the takeoff of another one because it didn't function correctly. We sent the radio signal too late, and the camera didn't track bullshit. I don't know. When you're talking about like once in a lifetime kind of shots like that, and you're doing it on a mission like that, they're not going to leave anything up to chance.
But you're saying that you landed a physical object on the moon, with people inside, but you couldn't get like an invisible radio wave to like transfer to the moon at a specific, like they launched off one planet to another moving object, somehow connected with it and landed on it, but they couldn't send a radio wave at the correct time. Like, that seems like something that would be way easier to mathematically predict.
I don't know. But anyways, let's move on here. So all of the Apollo names, the missions, the names of the landing sites and the events having to do with the Apollo program all echo occult metaphors and rituals and symbolism of the Illuminati and the secret religion they're in.
So what are the names?
Well, like Apollo is actually short for Apollyon, or something like that, and that's in the Bible. That's another alternate name for the devil. So again, that would be, kind of hearkening toward or back toward these guys being Satanists, and to a Satanist, Satan is God. So, that's their ode to their God or whatever. Actually, let me see. I got to check my notes here, but I think I have some other... Oh, okay, well, let's check this out. For example, the Apollo 13 mission. Everybody remembers that. That's the mission that they made the movie out of with Tom Hanks and all that stuff, where they had a problem up there, and they had to solve it, and it was a big nightmare, and da-da-da-da. Well, that was actually supposedly like a big symbolic Mason kind of deal or whatever, because each stage of that Apollo 13 mishap kind of echoed the Illuminati symbolism for their initiation ceremony. Apparently, there's the death in the ceremony, which equals the explosion that screwed up their vehicle up there. There's the placement in the coffin in the ceremony, and that equals that period of uncertainty whether or not they would survive up there. There's the rebirth part of the ceremony, which is their successful repairs of the module up there,
coming out of the horror.
Yep. And then there's the rising up of the grip of the lion, or the lion's paw, which is the re-entry and recovery of the astronauts of Apollo 13. So that whole thing apparently. And then I've also heard that like the Challenger explosion and the Discovery I think Columbia was a little bit different. But the Challenger explosion was supposed to be like that as well. But we can get into that.
Did you catch that sentence, by the way? This is going...
I actually have that, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So this is outside of the Apollo program, but just something, for food for thought here. But the shuttles all had, obviously, unique names, and one guy arranged this into a sentence, which I believe Chris has written down.
Well, just to finish the last idea, the number 13 as well represents... it's an Illuminati number that represents death and rebirth.
The Phoenix or something like that.
Yeah, it's the Phoenix is like their god or something.
A symbol of that. Yeah,
and the transition from the old to the new. So, and again, we're trying to transition people from being themselves as a sovereign thing to, us as the bad guys having all the power. I guess is their whole deal.
Yeah.
So the meanings of the names of the space shuttles apparently decodes into a secret message. Just using pretty much the names of the shuttle. So if you put it all together, it's a Columbian enterprise to endeavor for the discovery of Atlantis, and all challengers shall be destroyed. And Columbia, just like the District of Columbia, represents the United States, apparently.
Like America. Yeah.
Destroyed to make way for the new Atlantis. And the alternate quote here, the Atlantis would be like their successful turning of the world into their, new utopia of elitist globalist scum.
Yeah.
To quote Alex Jones, I'm not a supporter of his anymore. Alternate quote here would be the enterprise called Columbia will endeavor to discover the lost city of Atlantis, but all challengers will be destroyed.
Yeah, so the Challenger...
don't oppose, or you'll get blown up.
Exactly.
Excuse my language. Apollo had to stop when they realized, this is, again, still Bill Cooper's breakdown of this whole deal. Apollo missions had to stop when they realized that they couldn't keep up the hoax, and continuing would ultimately lead to being discovered as being hoaxers.
Well, that's, to me, the most realistic way they would have stopped a program like that. Because why would they have the ability to fly something to the moon and then stop? I mean, I understand money's a big deal, but this is kind of a pride thing of the nation. It's like building big statues and opulent sculptures or huge buildings and stuff like that in major metropolitan areas. It's what you do to look like a powerful super player on the world stage here. So Why would they take a program that was working and successfully working like over and over and over again? I mean, the failure rate was fairly low for launching a missile out at the moon, you know?
Yeah.
So they got rid of a program like that, and then we just never went back and did it.
Well, you know what's funny? I heard too, in a different, this was some other source, but I heard that they had to quit, or the last Apollo mission was the last one because people started complaining that the Apollo footage was interrupting I Love Lucy broadcast.
Yeah, exactly. It was interrupting TV shows, and
so saying, come on, we've already seen this shit
wasn't
before,
popular anymore. Yeah, we've seen you land on the moon. Come on, let's move on to the next thing. Yeah, so like the world's biggest achievement just totally outshined by it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's the biggest deal ever, and now our people don't care because it's interrupting their television shows. Unfortunately, here, buddy, I'm noticing that we're hitting the end of the hour or the half hour here.
It's that time again.
It always seems like it gets.
I know it goes by way too fast. Yeah. But this, once again, is just a part 1 in the series. So we went a little bit over the history. We kind of went in a couple other directions, too. But there's a lot of material to cover here. So don't worry. We have way more to come in future episodes. Next episode, I'm going to force Chris to do it. But the ultimate and holy grail of hoaxing the moon, or excuse me, the man that stands behind that would be Bart Seabrill. So
yeah, our hero.
Well, I don't know if he's a hero, but he's certainly an interesting character in this whole debate here. So
take some stones to walk up to astronauts and be like,
I really want to talk about that too. Yeah. So Bart Seabrill, we're gonna pretty much make him a centerpiece. We're gonna use him for a lot of examples in the next episode here, as he covers the most compelling evidence for the fact that the moon landing was a hoax.
And he did a lot of really good research. He uncovered special
really quality
footage
research
from NASA that nobody else had. And it's very illuminating what he found in that footage. So we'll dig into all that stuff on the next episode here.
But before we take off, Chris, where can they find us on Gmail?
Well, you can always find us. You can always message us on nasafraudcast@gmail.com. What's that address again?
nasafraudcast@gmail.com.
And where can they find us on YouTube?
They can go to the NASA Fraudcast channel on YouTube, and you'll see all our videos. Please like and subscribe if you like this video. Of course, subscribe if you'd like to see future videos as soon as they come out. We're going to be launching this relatively frequently, so at least a couple of times per week. That number hopefully is going to grow as we continue to do this.
Yep. Working out the kinks of all of our editing and getting the program itself as a vehicle going here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So until then, Chris, this has been Space Erased.
Yep, I'm your host, Chris.
And I'm Matt.
Good night, everybody, and thanks for watching.
Here, buddy.
How about a handshake?